Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar by Consumer Action, Not Buying It, Protecting Consumers from Deceptive Ads and Misinformation. My name is Nelson Santiago, and I am a Community Outreach Manager with Consumer Action. I'm excited that you're on today, and on with us as well as my colleague, Yajay Moon. She is a Community Outreach Manager with Consumer Action as well. We both welcome you to the webinar. Before we, oh, by the way, I should say Yaja will be monitoring questions. So any of you who are already having a question for her, please type it into using the question function, and we will present your questions at the end. But before we move into the program, I do want to take a moment to thank our sponsor. Our sponsor for this webinar is Smart News. They are the popular news aggregation app. And Smart News has been an ongoing supporter of Consumer Action and of our efforts to help combat misinformation. Today, we are lucky to have Sho Masuda with us. Sho is the Vice President of U.S. Media Business at Smart News. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Sho to give a brief welcome. Are you there, Sho?
Yes, thank you, Nielsen, for the kind introduction. Hope you can all hear me. Sorry, I had to join from the phone. Technical difficulty here this morning. First of all, hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here today to discuss such an important topic, misinformation. Before, just really want to say first things, I want to thank the Consumer Action for hosting this event. For decades, as Nielsen mentioned, we've been supporting Consumer Action because it makes consumers stay informed and protected as technology evolves. I think that mission is more important than ever. Also grateful to be here. Sorry for calling your first name, Shana and Michelle, and look forward to learning from alongside of you. And lastly, anyone who's joining, thank you for that. Many of you, I understand, are community leaders and consumer advocates. You're often the most trusted people when it comes to this topic, and people turn to you when they're trying to separate fact from fiction. So very important that you're all here. We all know that work is becoming harder. We're at the point where the content can be created quickly, made to look real, push out to huge audiences almost instantly. Even in the news space that we operate, text, images, audio, and even video, it's hard to distinguish what is authentic and what's not. So I believe the dangers are real and present. Smart News was built around a simple mission to deliver quality information to people who need it. Quality is the key word here. That's why we work directly with trusted partners, publishers across the globe, focus on elevating credible reporting. For us, fighting misinformation and supporting high quality journalism is not new, but it's part of our DNA. But like I said, misinformation is becoming easier to create and easier to distribute. I believe we all have a role to play here, and I believe strongly that ultimately the strongest defense against misinformation is an informed public. So this is why I think the discussions that we will have today matters deeply. Thank you, and I look forward to today's discussion.
Thank you so much, Sho, and thank you again to Smart News for their support. And yes, we do have a lot of community leaders on today. Hundreds of you registered to be part of today's webinar. We are so glad that you have. Some of you may be new to Consumer Action if you heard of this through maybe one of your community partners. If you are, I do want to tell you just a little about Consumer Action. We are a national nonprofit education and advocacy organization founded way back in 1971. We're celebrating our 55th anniversary later this year. On our website, you can see the URL right on the screen. We offer several consumer education tools and materials that you can use in your community education work. We're known for our multilingual materials. These are available typically in English, Spanish, and Chinese, oftentimes also Korean and Vietnamese. And speaking of technology, all of our translations are done by two human beings, so you can definitely rely on our materials. We cover topics related to personal finance, consumer scam prevention, telecom, privacy, and of course, media and news literacy. All of our materials are downloadable for free, and you'll want to check them out when you get a chance. One of the things that you can find there now related to today's topic is our fact sheet entitled News Literacy Skills for Judging the Credibility of What You Read, See, and Hear. The topics covered include what news literacy is, why it matters, how inaccurate information can quickly spread on social media, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that today. It also includes a practical list of do's and don'ts to help readers protect themselves and protect others from misinformation. And it includes links to several nonpartisan resources for learning about news literacy. You can download the fact sheet at the URL that you see on screen. And at this point, you might be wondering, am I going to get a copy of these slides? We are going to send in about a week a PDF version of these slides for you to be able to visit the various resources that we mentioned. And also, we will make available a recording link of the webinar so that you can catch this at your leisure as well, or show it to your colleagues. Now, let's moving into the program that we have for today. Our speakers are, let me see, here. We've got Shana Mueller, who is the Director of Communication and Public Policy and Advocacy at Truth in Advertising, or TINA.org. And we also have Dr. Michelle Amazeen, Associate Dean of Research and Associate Professor of Mass Communication at Boston University's College of Communication. We are so glad that they are here today. We will share with you their bios in our follow-up email next week. I'm going to ask them to tell us about their work as they present their presentations. I'm going to go ahead then and move into the program. We have a lot to cover, and we will start with Shana Mueller. Shana, we will have you share your own slides so you can advance them.
Okay.
And if you're in the background, if you could help with that.
So I'm pulling them up right now. Can you see them?
Yes, we can. You just want to go into full screen mode.
Okay, so here we go. Thank you, Nelson and Consumer Action, for putting together this important webinar. As Nelson said, I'm Shana Mueller. I'm with truthinadvertising.org, or TINA.org for short. For those of you who are not familiar with our organization, we are a nonprofit, a national nonprofit, nonpartisan consumer advocacy group that works to stop, prevent, and expose deceptive marketing. We do that through education and advocacy. And we focus on marketing of all kinds and in all sectors of the economy. In terms of education, through our website and our social media platforms, we work to inform consumers about scams and deceptive marketing ploys that they need to watch out for. Side note, much of what we do is actually based on consumer complaints and tips that we get at our website. On the advocacy side, our legal team investigates the sort of more egregious and pervasive examples of false advertising that we find, and we take legal action to get the deception to stop. And that could be anything from reaching out to the companies directly, working with the self-regulatory groups, and then also to filing complaints, formal legal complaints with state and federal regulators, urging them to take action. And just to brag a little bit, since 2015, state and federal agencies have obtained monetary judgments of more than $1 billion against wrongdoers based on our legal actions and evidence, and returned millions of ill-gotten gains to consumers. So let's talk a little bit about false and misleading advertising. Every year, Americans lose billions of dollars as a result of deceptive advertising and false ads. And it doesn't just affect consumers, it actually also harms honest businesses that are trying to do the right thing. Today, I'm going to highlight some of the issues that we've taken action on and give you some practical tips on how to protect yourselves. And, this is truth in advertising, so be prepared to see a lot of ads. The first step is Made in the USA marketing. And I thought that with July 4th right around the corner, this would be a great place for us to start. Advertising products as made in the United States is a very popular tool for marketers, because surveys have shown that the majority of American consumers prefer to buy American-made products, and they're even willing to pay more for them. The FTC's bar for what qualifies as made in USA is pretty high. Products labeled as made in USA must be all or virtually all made in the United States with no or negligible foreign content. But TINA.org has found that marketers have been playing fast and loose with this standard. We have investigated a number of brands, including lots of familiar names like Target, Williams-Sonoma, Mercedes-Benz, Gillette, New Balance, Jeep, Almay, many more, deceptively advertising products as made in USA that are either made abroad or use a significant number of imported parts. I'm going to show you two examples of our work in this area. One is going to be the very first Made in USA action that we did, as well as a more recent one. And I'm going to start off with Walmart. And since we're truth in advertising again, I'm going to show you an ad. So, acting on a tip from a consumer, we looked into Walmart.com and found that it was using prominent red, white, and blue Made in USA labels on web pages for products that were actually made in whole or in part in other countries. We combed through the website and we found hundreds of these examples. And these are just two of the ones that we found, but we have literally hundreds on our website. We reached out to Walmart, who told us that these were just coding errors. But we found more and more, and we found that these issues were ongoing. Ultimately, we filed a complaint with the FTC. Walmart responded by making some changes to the way that Made in USA products were displayed online, including adding a disclaimer, which says this. Over the years, we have continued to find issues and report about them. And as recently as just last week, we were told about a continued issue with deceptive Made in USA advertising on the website. So moving on, our most recent Made in USA investigation involved the window and door company Renewal by Andersen.
At Renewal by Andersen, we don't believe in one size fits all. Each of our windows and doors are custom built right here in the USA. Skilled American workers craft every frame, every pane, every detail. So whether you're upgrading your windows or transforming your patio or entryway, you're investing in American craftsmanship. Built for your home, built to last. Custom built in the USA.
So we found that the company was deceptively advertising its products as made and custom built in the US when they actually contain imported parts. Sometimes you can see that in the fine print, and sometimes you can't find that information at all. We filed a complaint with the FTC exactly a year ago today, and we are hopeful that the agency will take action. So in terms of deceptive Made in USA advertising, what are consumers able to do? Our advice is that if Made in USA is important to you, make sure and check for inconsistencies with a brand's origin claims before you buy. So when shopping online, that means I have to carefully read the product specs and other fine print. Maybe you have to confirm by looking at what the manufacturer is saying about the product. Sometimes you just have to check the return policy, honestly. And so that if you order the product and get it, you can look at the label that's on the product in real life. And if it's not what you're expecting, that you're able to return it. So now let's move on to another area of deceptive advertising that we've done a lot of work in, and that is deceptive subscriptions. The booming subscription economy means that everything from meal kits, home cleaning services, kids gear, and even lingerie can now be purchased through a subscription. But many of us sign up for a risk-free trial or maybe a discount and end up enrolled in a subscription that we either didn't know about or that we don't want. Many subscriptions are what we call a negative option offer, and that means that it depends on the consumer to take action in order to avoid recurring charges. And often cancellation can be extremely difficult, especially compared to how easy it is to sign up. In general, companies are required to clearly, conspicuously disclose all the important terms of an offer before getting your payment information. They're also supposed to get your express informed consent before charging you, and supposed to provide you simple cancellation methods. Unfortunately, plenty of companies choose to violate the law, and I'm going to show you two brands that we've looked into that have problematic negative option offers.
This season's brightest idea? Say hello to Adore Me, the new way to shop lingerie and swimwear. With 500 styles from petite to plus, free shipping and free exchanges, it's easy to get hooked. Visit adoreme.com to get your first bra and panty set for $24.95. Your old bras will understand.
So Tina.org investigated a lingerie company and found that it was using ads that deceptively promoted sales prices that were only available to consumers who were part of its VIP membership program. And this program, people were enrolled automatically when they were trying to take advantage of this discount offer, and it wasn't very clear. The company also required users to take monthly action so that they wouldn't get charged. And to add insult to injury, Adore Me made it very difficult to cancel the subscription. We sent legal complaint letters detailing all of this to federal and state regulators, and they agreed with us. The company ultimately reached settlements totaling in the millions with both the FTC as well as a number of states. Next up, we have Homoglow. Ads for Homoglow have a pretty enticing offer.
Homoglow just cleaned my entire house for $19. Seriously, $19. They showed up right on time, did my dishes, my laundry, they even cleaned my windows. You just pick a date, pick a cleaner, and enjoy a spotless house for $19. I love using Homoglow, and I think you will too. I can feel the winds of change.
So we dug up the dirt on this unrealistic $19 offer, and there were a lot of issues with this company, and you can read more about them on the website. But the one that I wanted to focus on is what is not obvious from the ads, and that is that those who are signed up for this $19 offer were automatically enrolled in a subscription called a Forever Clean membership that costs $49 to $59 a month. And here's the real kicker. That $49 to $59 a month membership fee is on top of what you would have to pay also for the cleanings. The company also made canceling not just difficult, but expensive. It required members to pay a pretty hefty cancellation fee if they canceled before 6 months was up. Again, we sent this to state and federal regulators, and the good news is that they are paying attention. So in terms of negative option offers, you might ask what you can do to protect yourself. And here's what we would advise. Be really careful with risk-free trials and bargain offers. As you can see from the Homoglow and the Adore Me examples, sometimes that bargain offer is just there to lure you in and get your credit card information. Carefully review any pre-selected items in your cart. We've noticed that some retailers it's not very clear what it is. There's an item in your cart, you didn't select it. The terminology may be confusing. So if there's anything that's already in your cart, that's not something that you put in, take a careful look at that. If you do sign up for a subscription, you need to track those cancellation dates really carefully. Put them in your calendar. They're very strict about them. Check your credit card statements and your bank statements on the regular, and make sure and keep an eye out for those unwanted charges. In terms of consumer reviews, check out consumer reviews, but we will say that fake reviews is a problem. And so it's important to look at multiple different platforms. Don't just check one source for reviews. And as always, read the fine print before handing over your payment information. The final area that I'm going to be going over is greenwashing, which happens when a product or service makes something sound better for the environment than it actually is. Examples could include claiming a product is recyclable when it doesn't actually get recycled, sustainable when it has a negative impact on the environment, and biodegradable when it doesn't efficiently break down. The FTC considers greenwashing a violation of the law and provides guidance on this type of marketing through its green guides. Buying products that don't hurt their environment is increasingly important to consumers. And the majority of American consumers actually say that they prefer environmentally friendly products, and 2/3 say that they would be willing to pay more for them. And like Made in USA, the marketers are catching on. So the first example I'm going to discuss is Tom's of Maine.
The first of its kind recycled toothpaste tube for Tom's of Maine is a momentous occasion. It really goes to the heart of who we are as a brand. We are very thoughtful of innovating in ways that ultimately help to minimize our impact on the environment. We designed the number 2 plastic in our tube to be circular, so it can be reprocessed and turned into new packaging or new products in the end.
We've put on our packaging a blue flag that says we've switched to a recyclable toothpaste tube. So you'll know when you're using the tube whether or not it is one of our recyclable tubes.
We're working to bring the recycling community on board by partnering with key third parties to figure out what is the true pathway to bring not just Tom's of Maine toothpaste tubes, but all toothpaste tubes, changing them from non-recyclable to broadly recycled. I'm proud that we're the leaders in this, and we expect to do more of this in the future. It's great for recyclers, it's great for people, and ultimately it's better for the planet.
So in early 2020, Tom's unveiled its first of the kind recyclable toothpaste tube and told consumers that they could be thrown in the recycling bin and be recycled. Ads on the website, social media platforms, and Amazon amplified this message that the tubes will be recycled. But Tina.org's investigation found that while Tom's and Colgate toothpaste tubes were technically recyclable in that they're made of a kind of plastic, recyclable plastic, the tubes are not actually getting recycled at recycling facilities for several reasons. It's contamination, the odd size, the shape. And so, yes, it's technically recyclable, but the truth is that they're ending up mostly in landfills. This is a violation of the law because the green guides state that products should not be marketed as recyclable unless they're actually getting recycled at facilities available to the majority of consumers. And we found that that was not the case. We reported this issue to the FTC as well as a couple of states, and we're urging them to take action. It has been picked up from the media, so, we've gotten this news that perhaps the Connecticut AG might be looking into this, so we're hopeful that there will be some action on this. We found a similar issue with Keurig K-Cups. In late 2020, Keurig announced that it had achieved its sustainability goal and that all K-Cups were recyclable. Since then, the company has been promoting its eco-friendliness, prominently featuring the word recyclable and the chasing arrows on packaging and other marketing materials. The fine print tells a different story. The pods are not recycled in many communities. It literally says that. Just like with Tom's of Maine, it's because of the shape, the size, contamination that are keeping these pods from getting recycled. Despite the fact that most consumers believe recyclable means the product will actually be recycled, these K-Cups are also ending up in the landfill. We filed complaints against Keurig with the FTC and numerous state regulators early this year, and we're waiting for action. So what can you do if caring about the environment is important? The fact is that the only thing green about lots of products is the money that companies make from them. We advise proceeding with caution when it comes to environmental marketing claims, especially the sort of aspirational ones. about what's going to happen in the future. So in terms of tips, first off, understand what those chasing arrows means. The chasing arrow, it does not mean that something is recyclable or that something is made from recyclable materials. It actually appears in all types of plastic, and it basically tells you what type of resin is used in the plastic. Number 1 can usually be recycled, number 6 or 7, not so much. Don't confuse a product that is made with recycled materials for one that is recyclable. Know the difference between recyclable and compostable. According to the green guides, recyclable means the product can be reused, whereas compostable means that the product will safely break down into usable compost. And like with everything else that I've talked about today, read the fine print. These are just a few of the examples, the type of deceptive marketing that we look at. I want to mention that we also look at deceptive health claims that not only scam consumers, but also have serious health consequences. We look at misleading income and health claims used by multi-level marketing companies and their distributors. We have examined deceptive practicing tactics that are being used by a variety of retailers, especially now with a lot of junk fees being added on, despite what the advertising says. We've looked at bait and switch schemes that lure consumers in. Undisclosed influencer ads are still a problem. And also we look at deceptive and harmful advertising to kids and much, much more, which you can read about all of this on our website. I also wanted to add a quick note about AI and its impact on deceptive advertising. The fact is that what AI is doing right now is turbocharging all the existing types of false and deceptive advertising. So we're getting more realistic imagery and videos. It's churning out fake testimonials, fake reviews. All the tips that I've given you today really just apply whether or not AI is used to create the marketing. And I think the most important takeaway that I hope that you can get out of this talk is that it's very important to complain. Many types of scams and fraud are underreported. So when it comes to false and deceptive advertising, I want to encourage you to make your voice heard and help others by filing complaints. You can go to the FTC, your state AG's office, to consumer groups. You can report to us on our website. We have a report and ad button that shows up. And we do look at every single one of them. So help us keep ads honest. That's all I have for today. I hope that this was helpful, and I'm going to turn it back to Nelson.
Thank you so much, Shana.
I'm going to stop sharing, right?
I will reshare my screen. You guys can see my slides okay? We've still got Shana and Dr. Amazeen up. Thank you, Shana. One thing we saw in your bio, and we can see it now, is your passion for this topic. Shana mentions in her bio that she is passionate about consumer advocacy, having personally observed how immigrant families are often targets of many scams and schemes. And a lot of the people we have on definitely work with immigrant communities and other populations that maybe aren't watching all the headlines necessarily or getting this information. Certainly for those who maybe aren't English speakers, the people who are on today will be able to share the information you are providing us today. So we're really glad you are here. Thank you for that wonderful talk and all those videos. I'm going to go back and look at those closely. Next, we also are going to hear then from Dr. Amazeen. Dr. Amazeen's research, I'll tell you a little bit about her, focuses on persuasion and misinformation, exploring the nature and persuasive effects of information and efforts to correct it. Since 2021, Dr. Amazeen has been ranked among the top 2% of highly cited scholars globally by Stanford University. Her research has been published in leading academic journals and cited over 60 times in policy documents worldwide. Dr. Amazeen enjoys challenging herself and her students to critically evaluate our media environment. Please consider us your students today, Dr. Amazeen, and challenge away. I'll go ahead and move to your slides and advance them as you need.
Thanks so much, Nelson, and thank you to Consumer Action for inviting me. And thanks to Shana. What a great presentation. I love truthinadvertising.org. I've been a follower for years, so thank you for sharing that valuable information. So we can advance to the next slide, Nelson. And I'd like you to imagine that you are scrolling through your social media feed and come across something like this. It is a seeming article in the Washington Post about recycling. Interesting that Shana was talking about recycling. I'll be talking about recycling too. But unless you click through on the article, you would never know that this is actually an advertisement. It is. It's undisclosed. You can't tell from this social media post. So if you could go to the next slide, this is what it looks like if you click on that article. And you'll see it's on the Washington Post's website. It's a seeming article titled "Modernizing Recycling Can Help Keep the U.S. Competitive." So recycling is a big thing in the business industry. But if you look closely, if you advance the slide, Nelson, you'll see that in the upper left corner, it is actually disclosed that this is content from the American Chemistry Council, which is an industry trade group. And what this discloses is that this is not an article written by Washington Post reporters. This is native advertising that was created by the Washington Post's in-house content studio, WP Creative Group. If you could go to the next slide, please. And so this is one of the first of three key points I'm going to make today, that it is news outlets that are helping to contribute to the information pollution problem that we are all experiencing. It's both legacy and digital first news outlets. They're contributing to this problem by creating native advertisements within their own institutions. Next slide, please. And so what is native advertising? Well, it's a type of hidden or covert marketing practice where an advertisement mimics or appears native to the platform on which it appears. I have been studying this practice in news environments. I've written a book about it called Content Confusion because it is very confusing, and that's by design. And so one of the problems is that while this type of commercial content is required by the Federal Trade Commission, they have a requirement that it needs to be clearly and conspicuously disclosed. There's no standardization as to what those disclosures must say. Therefore, they say almost anything: sponsored, promoted, paid post. Next slide, please. And so all of the leading news outlets in the United States and globally as well, many from around the world, have now created these in-house content studios. They're like mini advertising agencies within the news organization that creates this content. This is an example of the New York Times in-house content studio. It's called T-Brand Studio. And they create these ads on behalf of paying clients, and it looks just like the news reporting coming out of their newsrooms. Next slide, please. And so this is an example of a native ad that the New York Times created on behalf of ExxonMobil. Next slide. If you look closely, you'll see the disclosure right at the top. It says paid post, but it's often hard to see because it's in small font, or it's grayed out, or it's unclear what the disclosure language means. So this was on behalf of ExxonMobil. Next slide. There's also examples from the Wall Street Journal. So this is about Tyson Foods and how they are reducing the carbon that's released by its cows that they use to make their meat. Next slide. If you look closely, though, although this appears to be a Wall Street Journal article, it too is native advertising on behalf of Deloitte. Their client, Deloitte's client, is Tyson Foods. Next slide, please. It's not just the national news outlets, it's also in local news. So this is the Penn City Current. This is in Iowa. It's in Fort Madison, Iowa. Next slide, please. It looks like it's an article about clean energy home upgrades, so different ways that you can take advantage of renewable energies when upgrading your home. But if you look closely, you can see it says sponsor content there. It doesn't tell you who the sponsor is. If you read carefully in the article, it mentions the Propane Education Research Council, PERC. They are actually the sponsor of that article, but it's not disclosed. Next slide, please. It's also in newsletters. So this is a daily newsletter from the Boston Globe. I live in Boston, and I subscribe to this daily newsletter that's targeted at younger people. And they come out daily with this B-side newsletter. But if you look closely, next slide, please, you can see that this entire newsletter is sponsored by the state of New Hampshire. They're actually trying to get you to come visit New Hampshire. So this was an extra edition. Usually this appears in my email box in the mornings. On May 11th, a second edition came out, an extra edition. The whole thing is an ad. Next slide, please. And it's also entire news sites. So if you look closely, next slide, you can see that this news site in Richmond, California, the Richmond Standard, it is entirely sponsored by Chevron, the fossil fuel company. And so with many communities around the country losing news outlets, what's taking its place is sometimes these sponsored types of news organizations. So this is concerning. Just imagine what their climate coverage is like in this outlet, the Richmond Standard, that's funded by Chevron. This is problematic. Next slide, please. And so my second point is that native advertising in the domain of news is problematic because it often deceives audiences and harms journalistic integrity. Next slide, please. So I've done research on this, talked to thousands of people across the United States, and have found that the vast majority of people, when they are presented with this type of content, they can't distinguish it from real news articles. And that's because by design, it is made to deceive people. It mimics news coverage. Next slide, please. And so part of the issue is that when this content is shared on social media, next slide, the disclosures that are supposed to be there, next slide, please. If you share it on social media, the disclosure disappears. So this is what that article in the Penn City Current looks like if I share it on social media. I think this is on Facebook. There is no indication that this is commercial content. It just looks like it's an article from the Penn City Current. And this violates FTC regulations. And this is a problem. And this is why it's deceptive to people. It's another reason why this is deceptive to people, because often when people share things on social media, they don't click through to actually read the content that they're forwarding. You may think you're actually sending a useful article to your cousin, but in actuality, it's sponsored content. Next slide, please. Another issue that I've discovered is through my research is that this type of practice, native advertising, it harms people's perception of real journalism. So we did experiments where we exposed people to native advertisements when people realized that what they were looking at was sponsored content because we told them it was. And then we showed them real journalism from the same outlet that wasn't sponsored in any way. Their perceptions of that real journalism was tarnished. They found it less credible, even though it wasn't sponsored in any way. So this is problematic for the journalism industry. It's harming the integrity of the journalism. Next slide, please. Another issue, I want to come back to the recycling that we were talking about at the top of my talk. So this seeming article in the Washington Post, this representative from the American Chemistry Council is talking about how wonderful recycling is. And as Shana pointed out many times, the things can be recycled, but aren't for various reasons. Yet the Washington Post is amplifying this seeming news article that telling us how wonderful recycling is. Next slide, you can click 2 times. It is disclosed. So out of their newsroom is another story. Their news reporters are actually skeptical about recycling. So on the one hand, you have your Washington Post in-house content studio that's lauding the promise of recycling. And then within the same building, you have your journalists who are reporting, writing journalism out of the newsroom that's contradicting what the content studio is saying. This is a problem. Next slide, please. I've also done research to look at what happens to the amount of reporting within a news outlet after they have engaged in native advertising. So oftentimes news outlets need to be a little careful not to upset their sponsors, their advertisers with their reporting. And so a colleague of mine, Chris Fargo, and I, we researched this. We did a longitudinal study across 5 years to find out what happens to reporting on companies after they've run a native advertising campaign in a news outlet. And what we found, we looked at Fortune 1000 companies. And what we found is that half the time, there's significantly less reporting on that corporation following a native advertisement. This too is problematic. Next slide, please. And then the other thing I'll point out is that how this is distributed. So this is a real article in the New York Times that I was reading. And if you look over to the right, you'll see the editor's picks. So these are the New York Times editors suggesting that after I read this news article, I might like to read this other content that's in the New York Times. Next slide. If you look carefully, you'll see that the editors are actually encouraging me to read more native advertising from Chevron. So this is actually competing for audience attention. Next slide, please. So these are my concerns with native advertising. It's shown to deceive audiences. The disclosures disappear when they're shared on social media. And it has a number of harms on journalistic integrity, tarnishing the real journalism that's not sponsored. It contradicts the reporting coming out of newsrooms. It suppresses future reporting, and it competes for our attention. We only have so much attention we can give to media. Newsrooms are actually promoting their sponsored content rather than their real reporting to inform us. Next slide, please. So my last key point is that by blurring the line between ads and articles, native advertising has fueled what I call content confusion and open the door to accepting deep fakes and AI generated content, as Shana mentioned towards the end of her presentation. Next slide, please. And so what does this mean for you as a consumer? More specifically, your pocketbook? Say you came across this native advertisement that ran in the Wall Street Journal about Tyson Foods, talking about how they are creating beef that is more sustainable. It costs more to purchase this type of beef, but because you think it is more sustainable, you might be willing to pay the extra money for that. Next slide. What you're not told, of course, is that this is greenwashing, as Shana mentioned. Greenwashing is when something seems to be more environmentally friendly than it really is. So Tyson was actually sued by an environmental group, and they wound up dropping their climate smart beef label because they couldn't substantiate the claims that they were making in their advertising that was disguised to look like journalism. Next slide. Even the Wall Street Journal's newsroom reported on this, indicating that Tyson Foods was sued for greenwashing. So again, you have your sponsored content studio at the Wall Street Journal producing content to deceive you, and you have the Wall Street Journal reporters writing articles talking about this deceptive content. So it's also confusing. Next slide, please. So to wrap up, what can you do? You can click to the next bullet point. Again, click again. So from the producer standpoint, I argue in my book, Content Confusion, which you can see a copy there, that news outlets need to standardize the disclosures that they use. There needs to be one word: advertisement. None of these weasel words like paid posts that nobody understands what it means. Next slide. These disclosures also need to be watermarked so that they stick with the content no matter where it appears online. Next slide, please. Oh, and we also need to create a searchable ad library. So that's something that I'm doing. I am creating a fossil fuel native advertising observatory. If you scan this QR code on the screen here, I'm looking for examples of native advertisements. My team has collected a whole bunch of them, hundreds of them, but if you come across a native advertisement that has to do with sustainability, please fill out this form that you can access from this QR code and share that native ad with us so that we can add it to our database and study it so we can learn what are these companies saying about the environment and their role in it. Next slide, please. Secondly, from a distribution standpoint, next slide, please. We need to be monitoring the conduct of these news outlets and what they're doing and what they're saying on behalf of paid clients. We need to monitor whether they are being compliant with how they are disclosing this type of content. Next slide, please. And lastly, you can click again, media literacy, which is what we're talking about today. It's so important to be aware of everything that I've shared with you today about native advertising, as well as what Shana shared with you as well. And my last slide is just to thank you for your attention. There's an image of my book there. It is available open access. So if you Google Content Confusion, you can read a copy of my book for free and get some more tips on there. Please also feel free to reach out to me for any additional questions. But I think we're going to open it up now. Nelson, is that right? For any questions from the audience? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amazeen, and thank you for mentioning your book. I did happen to purchase a copy of it before I had that link, and I'm happy to support your work. It is a wonderful, it's an eye opener. There's so much information there, and a lot of images that will kind of just open your eyes about what's going on that might not be what you thought it was. So we are going to move into questions. I'll hand it over to Yaja. I have a couple of questions myself, but I'll let our audience please, if you've had experiences about the topics that we're talking about today, you want to share them, you want to ask questions, any tips, any more tips you may want on how to protect the community you serve. That's what this is about. What do we need to get out to consumers so that as they make decisions day to day, and they're based on what they see in the media, what should they, what tips do they need to follow, and what should they be aware of? So audience, please type in your questions and I'll let Yaja take over.
Thank you, Nelson. Yeah, please. We still have time. Type your question in the question box. We'll get to them. So since Dr. Amazeen, you just finished your part, there are a few questions about this native advertisement. The first question is the information in the native advertisement accurate? Are the native advertisers misleading us in their copy?
Okay, that's a great question. And the answer is, it depends. So sometimes the information in the native ads is accurate. I'm not suggesting that all native ads are inaccurate, but sometimes they are. Like the two that I shared with you today about recycling, and then about the sustainability and the environmentally friendliness of the Tyson beef. Both of those, the Tyson beef especially, was found to be greenwashing. So that's misleading. So it depends. And it's not balanced coverage because it's an ad. So that's a problem.
I wanted to add to that and say that when it comes to advertising, advertising can be truthful and still misleading. We see that a lot in terms of testimonials. So, one person may have had an experience with, let's say, a product, and they're sharing that product, or we see this a lot in the MLM industry, where individuals talk about how much money they've made. But if it doesn't represent the typical experience, it's still misleading to consumers. This is also the case with weight loss, right? So weight loss drugs may work for some and may not work for others. So that's why it's very important to talk about the typical experience when it comes to advertising. And this is how truthful advertising can also be deceptive.
Thank you. That's well said, Shana. Truthful but misleading. That's a good point. And then building on to the questions people ask about native advertisement, people also concerned about the journalism. People asking what happened to the ethics of journalism? Have journalist trade associations take any positions on those practices? Dr. Amazeen, do you have any information on that?
Yeah, so those are great questions as well. So, the journalism industry, I think, is very conflicted by this. So over the last couple decades, the business model in the journalism industry has crumbled. So the journalism industry for years had been supported by advertising. But with the introduction of the internet and then social media and pop-up blockers, a lot of the display advertising and classified advertising that used to support the printed journalism didn't migrate over online. And people also started installing ad blockers on their computers because of all the pop-up ads and banner ads that would interrupt their reading. And so the news outlets have been losing a lot of the advertising revenue that they used to rely on. And so native advertising has been one way that they can kind of replace some of that lost revenue, because native advertising can get around ad blockers. It's not interruptive because you don't know that it's commercial content. And so the professional organizations are an important consideration. So, and I do write about this in the book. So the Society for Professional Journalists and some of the other professional organizations that have codified the professional norms that journalists are supposed to abide by, most of them do mention avoiding blurring commercial content with journalistic content. However, there's no penalty. They don't, a journalist doesn't get ejected from the organization if they write native advertising. So you have a little bit of this, on the one hand, you shouldn't do this, but on the other hand, we need to make money. So there's a lot of conflict in there. Now, there are some journalists who have been dead set against this and who are like, this is awful, we should not be doing this. Those journalists, a lot of them have gotten pushed out of the profession or been fired. So a notable example of that is Jill Abramson. She had been the editor-in-chief of the New York Times. And around 2013, when they started talking about putting together their in-house content studio, T-Brand Studio, she was against it. And she made a lot of noise about it. And she was fired because of it. That wasn't entirely the only reason, but she said it played a large part of the reason why she was fired. She and I have discussed this. And there's been other journalists who have left because they're so disgusted about this. But then there's some journalists too who are just resigned that I want to keep my job. You know, I can't, I gotta go along with this, and I'll just kind of like pretend like it's not happening. Like if you're an environmental reporter and you see this happening, I mean, it's really tough.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Amazeen. And then, yeah, that's very concerning from the industrial perspective. Like saying that, are both of you aware, based on those advertisements that you said, are there any state bills to prevent any type of those practice? Anything you want to share about that?
Are there any what?
State bills that prevent either native advertising or anything like Shana shared.
Well, the Federal Trade Commission does state that sponsored content needs to be clearly and conspicuously disclosed. So like I showed the content that was shared on social media that is not disclosed, that's in violation and that is actionable. The FTC just doesn't have the bandwidth to go after all of those infractions. I think at the state level, some state legislatures do have similar, I know in Massachusetts, there's state laws about not deceiving consumers. And the Massachusetts Attorney General has sued ExxonMobil for deceiving its state consumers about the harms their products cause against the environment. And that native ad I showed you from the New York Times on behalf of ExxonMobil is an exhibit in the lawsuit for deceiving consumers.
Right, and I'll say that in terms of deceptive advertising, there are many bills that are potentially in Congress. I will speak briefly on negative option offers. The FTC did pass a rule last year called, it was wildly popular. It was click to cancel, so that it would make canceling these subscriptions as easy as it is to sign up. Unfortunately, it was struck down by the courts. The agency may or may not bring that back to the head. This is where, again, consumer comments become really important, consumer submissions. So if that does come up as a potential rule, I hope that your communities, you can get people to to talk about that and to comment, because those are very important considerations when these agencies come up with rules. So click to cancel. We all want that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was last year. Yeah, so people were also asking, like, because all of those like a deceptive advertisement practice, do you have any tips like for like a community leaders to developing like media literacy education resources? Like, are there anywhere they should look up? Like, do you have any suggestions on that?
Well, look at our website. We have lots and lots and lots of examples. I mean, it's voluminous. And we have what we call ad alerts, which are consumer alerts. And I think it's really important in terms of media literacy to be able to see an example. Just talking about the issue is really not enough. That's why I try to show the ads, because the ads will demonstrate what people are seeing and responding to. So yes, check out our website, tina.org.
I agree 100%.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you both. Yeah, just want to mention like Consumer Action also supported click to cancel rule. Yeah, so Nelson, those are the questions from the audience. Like, I know we're approaching like 1 hour. Do you want to go ahead with your questions, or do you want to wrap up?
I just, if that's it from you, Yaj, I just wanted to ask a little bit, and I saw it mentioned in your book, Dr. Amazeen, and feel free to chime in, Shana. Sometimes you're looking at a television show, and it could be a morning show you think it is, but it's actually mostly a big ad. It's a morning show, and also kind of for those of maybe some of us who get our news on YouTube or something from different sources where we maybe are pulled into a video that you think is going to talk about the economy or something, but then it ends up being selling people trying to sell gold or something, but you're pulled in by a headline. Of course, people on YouTube can maybe say most of whatever they want, but what for folks who are looking at TV or looking at videos, what do you need to know, and how much of it, how do you distinguish what's an ad, what's not an ad?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nelson, because I was talking mostly about digital media, but you're absolutely right. It's on YouTube, but even television. So my mother is 91 years old, and I've gone over to visit her at her apartment, and I'll come in and she has the TV on, and it's just, it looks like it's a TV talk show. I think the Jennifer Hudson show it was. That's what she was watching. And like there's a giant QR code, and they're like selling stuff. I'm like, Mom, what are you watching? And she's like, oh yeah, I know, it's mostly advertising. I'm like, yes, it is advertising. Or there's the infomercials about brain health, which I think Tina has reported on. So I'm afraid I just have to say, you can't believe everything that you see on television or in the newspapers or online. And you have to be skeptical about what you're seeing. Who's the source of the content? What are their motivations? These are the questions you need to be asking yourself when you're consuming this type of content. Are they trying to give me information? Are they trying to give me balanced information, or does it seem biased only to one side? Are they trying to sell me something? And if it seems promotional, then you really need to be skeptical.
And if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, you wish almost that the disclosures are built right into the titles of these things, right? So that
right. It's a huge disclosure is a huge problem. I mean, we see this on social media too, where like Dr. Amazeen was saying, there might be disclosure perhaps in the text, but nowadays, especially, people are just looking at videos and images, and those disclosures are not there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for the discussion, and for we've gone over a couple of minutes. I do want to mention it if I didn't mention it before. We are a nonprofit, and we do appreciate any support from the public. There are many ways to support our work financially. As you can see here, there's also a QR code here, and we will send you these slides. But also, just like with Dr. Amazeen's book, if you are not able to support financially, you can just follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll get this link next week. Another thing I'll just throw in here, if anyone is from the Seattle area, you please email me if you haven't seen our invitation to an in-person training we're having on avoiding fraud and scams. We are going to be in your area, so and this is a full day training. We get a lot into these webinars, but we also like to spend time in person with you. Maybe one of these days we'll bring Dr. Amazeen and Shana to an in-person training near you, we hope. So please watch your inbox. Thank you, Shana, Dr. Amazeen, for spending your time with us today. And everyone, we will see you soon. Thanks so much for being on. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.